Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Entrance. Jonathan Miller was always drawn to the thrill of theme parks, the bright lights, the dizzying rides, and the echoing laughter. One evening, he stumbled upon an old, decrepit theme park on the outskirts of town, one he had never noticed before. The sign, barely legible, read Eldritch Amusements. Curiosity piqued, he decided to explore. As he walked through the rusted gates, an eerie chill ran down his spine. The park was eerily quiet, save for the distant creak of a Ferris wheel turning slowly, as if driven by a phantom hand. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something else, something unidentifiable, but deeply unsettling. Jonathan approached the ticket booth, where a figure emerged from the shadows. The park owner, a gaunt man with sunken eyes and a sinister grin, introduced himself as Mr. Grimshaw. "Welcome to Eldritch Amusements," he rasped. "A place where dreams come true, or turn into nightmares." Despite the foreboding atmosphere, Jonathan felt an inexplicable urge to enter. Mr. Grimshaw handed him a ticket, his skeletal fingers lingering a moment too long on Jonathan's hand. With a nod, Jonathan stepped inside, oblivious to the dark fate awaiting him. The park was a labyrinth of twisted rides and abandoned attractions. As he wandered deeper, he noticed the unsettling silence. No other visitors, no joyful screams, just an oppressive quiet. Jonathan's unease grew, but he pressed on, driven by a morbid fascination. The first ride he encountered was the Whispering Carousel. The horses, once brightly painted, were now faded and chipped. As he climbed onto one, he felt a cold shiver run through him. The carousel began to turn, and Jonathan heard whispers, fragments of conversations, chilling pleas for help, and sinister laughter. He tried to dismount, but found himself paralyzed, forced to endure the haunting whispers until the ride finally stopped. Shaken, he continued his exploration, each step heavier with dread. Unbeknownst to him, Mr. Grimshaw watched from the shadows, his smile widening. Chapter 2. The House of Horrors. Jonathan's next stop was the House of Horrors, an imposing structure with boarded-up windows and a rotting facade. The door creaked open as he approached, beckoning him inside. The interior was pitch black, save for the occasional flicker of dim lights, revealing grotesque mannequins and twisted scenes of terror. As he ventured deeper, the air grew colder. Jonathan's breath came out in visible puffs, and he could hear the distant sound of someone sobbing. He followed the sound, his heart pounding in his chest. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, each step echoing ominously. Suddenly, he was plunged into darkness. Jonathan fumbled for his phone, but it slipped from his grasp and shattered on the floor. Panic set in as he stumbled forward, his hands outstretched, desperately seeking an exit. A faint light appeared ahead, illuminating a ghastly scene. A figure hung from the ceiling, its lifeless eyes staring directly at him. Jonathan recoiled in horror, recognizing the face. It was his own. The lights flickered and the figure vanished, replaced by Mr. Grimshaw, who appeared as if from thin air. "Having fun?" he asked, his voice dripping with malice. Jonathan backed away, but Mr. Grimshaw's skeletal hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with an iron grip. "The fun is just beginning," he whispered, before releasing him. Terrified, Jonathan fled the House of Horrors, vowing to leave the park immediately. But as he ran towards the exit, he found himself inexplicably drawn to another ride, the Phantom Coaster. Chapter 3. The Phantom Coaster. The Phantom Coaster loomed ahead, its towering tracks disappearing into the inky night sky. Jonathan hesitated at the entrance, but an unseen force seemed to propel him forward. The coaster car was waiting, its metal gleaming with an eerie, otherworldly light. He climbed in, the restraints locking into place with a bone-chilling click As the car ascended the first hill, Jonathan felt a growing sense of dread. The track seemed to stretch infinitely before him, twisting and turning in impossible ways. At the peak, the car paused, and Jonathan looked out over the park. In the distance, he saw Mr. Grimshaw, his figure a dark silhouette against the faint glow of the park's lights. Then, with a lurch, the coaster plunged downwards, racing along the tracks at a breakneck speed. The ride was a blur of nightmarish visions. Shadows reached out with clawed hands, ghostly faces appeared and vanished, and the air was filled with blood-curdling screams. Jonathan gripped the safety bar, his knuckles white with fear. As the ride slowed, he noticed something strange. The park was changing. The bright lights and cheerful decorations were replaced by decay and darkness. The laughter of children was replaced by mournful cries and sinister whispers. When the car finally came to a stop, Jonathan staggered out, his legs trembling. The park was no longer a place of innocent fun. It was a realm of horror, a twisted reflection of his own fears. Desperate to escape, he ran towards the exit, but the paths seemed to shift and change, leading him in circles. Everywhere he turned, he was met with the same chilling sights and sounds. It was as if the park itself was alive, feeding off his terror. Chapter 4. The Eternal Nightmare. Exhausted and terrified, Jonathan found himself back at the entrance, where Mr. Grimshaw awaited him. The park owner's grin was wider than ever, his eyes gleaming with malevolent delight. "Ready to leave?" Grimshaw asked, his voice echoing eerily. "I'm afraid that's not possible." Jonathan tried to protest, but his voice caught in his throat. A wave of realization washed over him as memories flooded back. Flashes of a terrible accident, the screech of metal, the feeling of weightlessness, and then nothing. He remembered the final ride he had taken, the one that had claimed his life. "You see," Grimshaw continued, "this is your home now. Eldritch Amusements is a haven for lost souls, a place where the dead relive their final moments for all eternity." Jonathan's heart sank as the truth set in. He was trapped, a ghost condemned to roam the haunted park forever. Each visit was a new chapter in his eternal nightmare, a cycle of terror that would never end. Mr. Grimshaw faded into the shadows, leaving Jonathan alone in the dark, silent park. The rides loomed around him, their twisted forms promising more horrors to come. He knew he would continue to visit them, compelled by a force he could not resist, reliving the nightmare over and over. And so Jonathan Miller became just another lost soul in Eldritch Amusements, a ghost among ghosts, forever bound to the place where dreams turned to nightmares and the dead found no peace.